So the first scripture is from Deuteronomy 31, verse 6. You're going to get a bunch of Old Testament hits on fear, okay? Just one after the other. They're all very short. And then one reading from the Newer Testament. So Deuteronomy 31, 6. Be strong and courageous. Have no fear or dread of others, because it is the Lord your God, and that could be translated the source and the creator of the universe, who goes with you. God will not fail you, and God will not forsake you. Isaiah 41:13. I am the Lord your God, the source and the creator, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear. I will help you. Psalm 56:11. In God I trust. I am not afraid. What can a mere mortal do to me? Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. And the well-known verse 10, be still and know that I am God. And then from 1 John chapter 4, verses 16 through 21. God is love. And those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of justice, because as God is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. We love because God first loved us. Those who say, I love God, and hate a brother or sister are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they've seen cannot love God whom they've not seen. The commandment we have from God is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters, their human siblings, also. And finally, the very last phrase of the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapter 28, when Jesus sends the disciples out into the world, the last thing he says is, remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Well, it's been a while since I've told any jokes. I don't have great ones, but I felt it might be a good week for a couple, so I'm going to work my way into the ones that I like the most, okay? The first one, Dad, I'm afraid for the calendar. Why is that? Because its days are numbered. Mom, I'm afraid of elevators. What are you going to do? I think I'll start taking steps to avoid them. Still working on that one? Or that bad? Okay. All right, now here we're getting to a little more sophisticated now. A man was in therapy, and the therapist said, describe the fear of failure in 2 words. And the man said, I can't. This was my favorite, but it's not really funny. It's just kind of interesting. There's a little boy who said to his mom, or her mom said to the little boy, hey, here's a broom. I want you to go and sweep the deck out in the back. And it was dark. And the boy said, Mom, I'm afraid of the dark. And she said, honey, don't worry. Jesus will be with you. And Jesus will help you. So Mom goes out of the room, and the boy cracks the door open. He sticks the broom out there and says, hey, Jesus, when you're finished sweeping the deck, would you hand the broom back to me? That kid's going to be a lawyer or something. I don't know. To put it mildly, it's been a rough couple of weeks for many people in our country, especially if you've been paying attention to the political world. So today I want to help us all find some courage and some strength from and with God, especially if we're feeling anxious and afraid for any reason, apart from politics, which most of us usually are for one reason or another. I myself have been wrestling with all of this, and preparing today's sermon really helped me. So if none of you get anything out of this really helped me. In fact, it helped me put together what I'm going to call the 4 steps for working with fear and anxiety. Now, a sermon title like that should go viral, don't you think? Yes. Maybe for the first 30 seconds, but... So that's what I'm going to share with you this morning. It's going to be a very practical message. But first, just a few words about the whole presidential campaign year at this point. Let's face it, those who fear the prospects of a Trump victory in November have had a rough and frightening couple of weeks, both because of the very poor debate performance Biden had, and then because of the Supreme Court's decision to grant presidents full immunity for all official acts taken as a president. And the obvious ideological bias of the Supreme Court has made it quite clear that our nation's system of checks and balances is, well, out of balance. Simple truth is that ever since the court voted 5-4 in 2010 to affirm the so-called Citizens United decision, which allows unlimited and unaccountable dark money by corporations and foreign entities into political campaigns, ever since then, our political processes and elected offices have been more clearly for sale than ever before, and controlled by the 1% of the wealthiest among us more than ever before. And the implications of all of this are frightening and, let's face it, a bit overwhelming. And don't worry, I'm not going to get partisan from the pulpit. In fact, I'm almost done with my references to that. But I do want to do my best as your pastor to prayerfully help us deal with reality as people of faith. The reality is that a lot of people, including many of you, because I talked to a bunch of you, are very concerned right now. A lot of you are dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety, and some of it is about personal stuff. So let's leave the specifics of why you're anxious and afraid, if you are, and just talk about the anxiety and the fear. So here are my 4 steps for working with fear and anxiety. Step 1, let God fill your soul with love. In my Pulse article last Friday, I mentioned an interview between a woman named Tina Brown and comedian Bill Maher. I also warned you not to watch it if you're easily offended by people like Bill Maher. His language is rough. He manages to offend everybody on all sides of everything. So I'm not suggesting that you watch it, but I like him because he does not pull any punches. And he will, I never worry about him spinning anything. You get what he thinks, and I often agree with him, not always. At one point, Tina Brown asked Bill Maher why he thinks that so many people in our culture actually seem to enjoy hating people on the other side of an issue. They were agreeing. I think people actually enjoy this. And he paused and said something I did not expect him to say. He said, I think the hatred fills an empty place in people's souls. And I thought to myself, I think you just nailed it, Bill. And you can have an empty soul on any side of any argument or any issue. So step 1 is let God fill your soul with love. None of us ever need to be moving through our lives with a deep emptiness in our soul. Remember that God is love. God is the deep flow of love in the universe, and if you're open to it and you'll welcome it within you. And even if you don't believe in God, if you are willing to let love flow through you, beautiful. Connect with that. Welcome that. And if and when you do, it will be very difficult to hate someone. I know some of you are thinking, yeah, well, I can pull that off. But you probably won't be at peace with it if love is flowing through you. And you certainly won't love hating, because your soul won't be empty. So that's step one. Step two, check in with your ego. When I'm feeling fearful or anxious, I have learned to ask myself, the quicker the better, has my ego been hooked somehow? So often when fear or anxiety hooks us, it gets us, it grabs us, it takes us for that ride, our own egos are being threatened. And that doesn't mean you're being inflated or arrogant or conceited. It means your sense of being who you are apart from God, on your own, that's your ego. You separate yourself from God, it's just you, and the world's a whole different place. Father Thomas Keating often taught about the ego's 3 primary programs for happiness, he called it. And these are so tricky because these things are all things that we need in some healthy ways, but they can get co-opted by the false self of the fallen ego if we're not careful. The 3 things are power and control, safety and security, and affection and esteem. So when fear or stress or anxiety hook you, when they hook me, I ask myself, is my ego struggling with one of those 3 areas? Power and control, safety and security, affection and esteem, and my desire and my need for those things. Father Keating says the way to peace here is just to admit it. Peace will come just by recognizing it for what it is and not fighting it and just saying, yeah, you know, I'm really struggling with what so-and-so thinks about me because I want that person to like me. Or I'm really struggling with this or that because I feel threatened by it. My basic security feels threatened. And if this or that happens, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And if we can just focus the fears, okay, that's what's going on here. And talk about it, as I said with the kids, then we can get to the next step. Step 3, place it in God's hands. I stop and ask, have I somehow been trying to pull this off on my own? Am I getting anxious and afraid because I'm living as if there is no God? Walter Brueggemann referred to this as his functional atheism. He said, you know, I know better. I mean, I want to believe in God. I think I do. But then when push comes to shove and I'm hooked, I am living as though there is no God. That it's completely up to me to pull this or that off. So often, we live as though there is no God. We all do it. So again, the trick is to catch ourselves as soon as possible and to say, God, please help me stay connected to you. Because without that, the problem is in one way or another, we're never going to measure up or feel like we're enough. Or we have enough, or it's going to be enough. Remember that phrase that I have preached so many times? All I know for sure is that God will always give us the grace we need to face whatever we have to face. And that means that no matter what happens to any of us personally, or no matter what happens in the fall election, God will be with us. And you might be thinking, well, God's not going to prevent the Supreme Court from overruling the sanctity of LGBTQIA plus marriages. But God will be with us if that happens. And what does that mean? Well, we may have to get a little crazier than we normally are. We may have to refuse to comply and take it on, as the church has at its best for 2,000 years. We need to remind ourselves the church was born in a situation of oppression and denial of rights and basic dignity of people that makes our current situation pale by comparison. The church knows how to do this. It's just costly and it's painful, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do. God will be with us. That's the point. We'll talk about this. Last step. Remember, you are loved perfectly by God. Right now, you and I, we, everyone and everything is being perfectly loved by God. No matter what happens, we, everyone will be loved perfectly. That means completely, deeply, holistically by God. And that love, according to 1 John 4, casts out fear. And it makes it almost impossible to hate anyone else, because God who is inside us loves them perfectly too. So here are the 4 things. Let God fill your soul with love. Check in with your ego. Place it all in God's hands. And remember that you are perfectly loved. Now, that's the end of the sermon, but we're going to just sit here now and listen to my daughter Emma sing a song that she and I have been working on together that will say it all better and way more effectively than I can. But don't tell her that I did this, because this was just a rough version that she sent to me on a voicemail, when we were working on the song. She doesn't know I'm sharing this publicly. She would be aghast, But let this speak to your heart.
Sometimes I just lose myself. Fear and doubt take hold. Times when I feel overwhelmed by all that is unknown. Spirit, come and calm me down. Help my heart find home. Still my mind, my fear, my doubt. Help me to truly know you are with me, with Some